Hello and welcome to another episode of Culinarian Quest. Today I'm doing a St. Patrick's Day celebration. Yay! Even though this video will probably be out the next day, just because this was a late meal item and my editing skills are not that quick, so... Anyway, I am doing a semi-twist on the classic cottage pie or shepherd's pie, as done by Real Irish Food by David Bowers. Now, what do I mean by a twist? I'm not following the recipe exactly as in the book, only because I added a couple of items to it. So it's not going to be 100% authentic Irish cottage pie, but for the most part I did follow the recipe as per the book. What you'll need for the recipe is 1.5 pounds of ground beef or ground lamb. What I used was a pound of ground beef and then stew ready lamb, and then just cut those into small pieces and soak them in milk to remove the gaminess. With that, then you'll need 1 medium onion, which will be diced, 1 large carrot that will be grated. I diced those as well. A teaspoon of chopped fresh thyme leaves, 2 tablespoons of butter. I used a little bit more, you'll see that in a little bit. 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 1 cup of beef stock, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, salt and pepper, 1 cup of green peas, doesn't matter what kind you have, 6 cups of mashed potatoes, and 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. Now the book says this is optional. I personally do not agree with that. I think if you're going to do a shepherd's pie, you need cheese on there. But that's just me. First things first though, to get our mashed potatoes ready, we have to peel these potatoes. Obviously, I have a new camera angle. Yay! I got a fancy new arm that I will be using in future videos as well. Please let me know what you think of this, and if I should continue to use 2 angles or just the one, or a mixture of both. But for now, I'm going to use the 2. But yeah. Peel these potatoes, and then once you have them peeled to your liking, which is preferably get all the skin off, especially for mashed potatoes, go ahead and cut them into smaller pieces, and then you will be throwing them in boiling water. Well, I didn't have them boiling at the water boiling at this point, but you know what I mean. You want to have warm water, that way your potatoes get nice and soft in a good amount of time for smashing. While the potatoes are getting nice and boiled and soft, we are going to work on the main part of the shepherd's pie. So for now, we will be browning the lamb and beef. I put the lamb in first after washing all the milk and gaming this off so that that doesn't stay in, and it stays relatively dry, that only we get the grease that will naturally come off in the first place. So you want to cook your beef and lamb until they are nice and brown and cooked all the way through. And the reason I did the lamb first is because obviously it's thicker and it will take just a little bit longer to cook than the beef. At this point, the recipe book says to drain off the fat and push the meat off to one side, assuming you have enough room. However, you saw the size of the pan I was using and the amount of meat I had, so pushing it to one side wasn't necessarily going to work very well for me. And I also did all the vegetables all at once. What you see is corn, onion, pea, and carrots. So I decided just to cook them off all at once. So here is where we get into where I put in a little bit more butter. So now you want to mix your meat and vegetables all into one portion, or if you did what the recipe said, it just mixed it all together in the first place. But what I did was I did half and half, and then I tossed the butter on top of the meat because it said to melt the butter and then to add the flour. So my mind went just throw the butter on and then throw the flour in and mix it from there. But then I remembered a video that I had saw a few minutes earlier before starting about making a hole in the middle and mixing it in there. So I decided to do that. While you're mixing and thickening up at the same time, this will be the time to add your tomato paste. And once you mix that all in nice and evenly, you can add your Worcestershire and beef stock mix in together. Now I mix the beef stock and Worcestershire sauce in together in the same measuring cup rather than put them in one at a time separately. And then you mix it together and then you let it sit for a bit to thicken up. This will also be the point you season with salt and pepper. And normally this is when you would put the peas in for the stew, but like I said, I mixed it all the veggies in all at the same time, so that step was already taken care of for me. And now that the main part of the shepherd's pie is finished, it's time to move on to mashing these potatoes. Once you are able to pass a knife through with ease without much resistance, drain well. You don't want too much water in there, if any at all. Now there's tons of methods to do this, but I prefer the hand method simply because, well, you can feel it with your hand, and it's the traditional way. Why not? So add some milk and butter, get to the creaminess you are looking for. I wouldn't say over creamy, but not creamy. Like, you don't want it too hard, but you don't want it too liquidy, because we are going to be throwing this in the oven right after we are done mashing this. So like I said, get it to the right consistency. Make sure you are flavoring with salt and pepper as well. I like to put some garlic powder in mine because I like garlic and it's a good flavor. And now we come to the construction of the actual shepherd's pie itself. This is an extremely complicated and precision required method, so I advise you to listen very, very carefully. Put your meat in, put the mashed potatoes on top. But in all seriousness, all you have to do is get a pre-buttered or pre-greased casserole pan. In this case, I'm using a cast iron casserole pan that I put some butter on before. You're going to use spray or olive oil. It doesn't have to be cast iron either, but fill in your meat to fill in the entire pan, and then put the potatoes in. Now, the video I mentioned earlier, I've seen a few minutes before, it was actually Babish University, and what he did was put the potatoes in a Ziploc bag, cut one of the corners, and spread the potatoes that way. Not exactly confident in my skills in doing that quite yet. So as you can see, I did the more traditional method of putting the potatoes on top and just spreading them out. Now, I didn't have quite enough potatoes to cover every little corner and part of the meat, but obviously you don't need to at all. It's just the way I am. I like to have things done a certain way, and when I don't, I cry. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so get the potatoes across the top as much as you can. Now it's also suggested to take a fork and make like peaks and valleys, so that way you get a nice browning on them and you can tell when it's cooked. My method here, you can see, was a little rough as is, so I decided to not do that. But if you're going for a more traditional shepherd's pie, then I would recommend doing the fork method here. And here's the point: you will put your casserole in a preheated 350 degree Fahrenheit oven. Now, there's no specific time frame for the cooking of the shepherd's pie in the oven. I did about 15 or so minutes. I did 10 minutes at first. Oh, did I say 15? Sorry. I did 10 minutes at first, and then I pulled it out and put on the authentic Irish cheddar cheese that was grated up earlier. Like I said, I think that if you're going to do a shepherd's pie, you need to put cheese on there. If you're going to do it on St. Patrick's Day, it damn well better be some Irish cheese. And then I put it in for a little under 15 more minutes, but you want to make sure that the sides are bubbling slightly. If not, you want to make sure that your mashed potatoes on top are browning. You want a good combination of both before you pull it out and say it's done. Mine were really bubbling. Not to the point it was like boiling bubbling, but my potatoes were kind of covered by a lot of cheese, so the browning didn't really take place. And once you have your desired bubbliness or brownness, miltiness, or whatever you want to call it, pull it out and sit out. Let it chill for a few minutes. Obviously, you don't want to bite right into it. But here is what mine looked like in the end. That's it, and that's how you make shepherd's pie or cottage pie, depending on how you desire to call it. I will say mine turned out a little flavor lacking. It wasn't like terrible, but obviously I think next time I will have to add a little more salt and pepper, some garlic, something to bring out the flavors a little bit more, because it was not bland, but bland enough that I was like, oh, I messed up. But again, this was my first time making it for St. Patrick's Day. There's always room for improvement no matter what. So maybe next year or a couple months down the line, I will remake it. With that, I'd like to say happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. I hope you had a good time and stayed safe as well. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.